It's a grizzly.
Should we get out of here?
No. We're gonna watch and listen.
Good evening, everybody. Wednesday night, and as you can see, Grizzly is still a little busy, so I am subbing again for him. You lucky devils, you. So tonight, very special guest, and we're not going to waste any time. We're going to get him right out here. We got Sean Forker from Sasquatch Experience, so everybody give him a warm welcome. Sean, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Brian. Thanks for having me on tonight with you. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I was sitting there reading through doing my due diligence, trying to background in the appearances you've been on and things you've done. Trust me, it's my pleasure.
I love this.
Oh my God, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank. From the David Carradine from Kung Fu talking to, I'm Grasshopper.
Oh, man, like I told you before we came on here, we're all nobodies, right? In a field of where there's no experts, we're all nobodies. And some of us have just been around a long time doing this, that's all. And I don't know if that makes us any wiser or just makes us a lot crazier. That's all.
A little of both, I think.
Right. I agree with that. Column A and column B, right?
Yeah, exactly. It just depends how deep you go and how many different people you're willing to listen to.
Right. Absolutely. And, the great thing about this, and I'm just coming out of the Pennsylvania Bigfoot camping adventure that happened over the weekend that was hosted by one of my mentors, Eric Altman. And it was a great event, Brian, and we had a good audience. And one of the things I talked about in our presentation on Saturday morning was myself and my partner, Matt Arner, who's one of the hosts of the show with me, is that the best part about this field is that nobody knows anything and we can all be wrong. And I think it's a marvelous place and position to be in a field of study. And I still consider it to be a science. Some folks, might consider it way into the paranormal. I don't think there's anything paranormal about this. It's different, right? And it's a little bit of biology, a little bit of zoology, and a little bit of everything. And the one thing we can't deny is that either it's coincidence or concurrent. There's some weird things that happen alongside these Bigfoot sightings, right?
Oh, yeah. I used to be very hardcore on my stance before I started doing too many of these shows that, flesh and blood and that's it. And then the more people I started talking to, it was like I really had to start erasing some of those lines I had drawn in the sand and started moving them back. And then eventually I got to the point where, there's no point in drawing the line because every time I do, somebody steps over it. So
I was like you. Back when I first started this, I was very militant in it being flesh and blood. And though I still believe it personally to be a flesh and blood creature, we'll use creature, and that's not to be offensive, but there are those folks that think it's more human, those folks that think it's more ape, those of us that have no idea, and for that reason I still call it a creature, not to be disrespectful, but because I lack of a better terminology for it. We could call it our subject, and that just gets a little boring, but we don't know. And there are people, Brian, that see things, whether it's a UFO or balls of light or flashes of lights, or these things kind of fade in and out like the Predator. They see some things, and we didn't witness it, right? You and I weren't there with them when they encountered this. So what gives us the right to say they didn't experience what they experienced? Whether we believe it or not, it shouldn't be our place to put the judgment on there. What we do is gather the facts and let the facts speak for themselves.
Yeah. I'm going to pull something up real quick, just to emphasize on your point. See if I can find it real quick. doo-doo-doo. There is a picture. Right.
I hope you don't hear any background noise. I have the window open in the
that's
studio,
not it.
so
Wrong
that's the
picture.
Jacobs photo.
Yeah. I want to pull up one. Actually, while I'm looking for this, how about you tell us how you got started?
Well, I was a little bitty kid, about 8 or 9 years old, and I like to talk. That hasn't changed in all the years I've grown up. And on our trip to my uncle's house in Virginia Beach, I just wouldn't shut up. So my dad stopped and got a book. Whether he got the book for himself or me, I'll never know to this day. But he gave it to me to quiet me up, and it was Sasquatch, the Apes Among Us by John Green. And that book, for some reason, just resonated with me and stuck with me. And I assimilated that book over our family vacation. I don't even remember the beach. I remember reading reading the book. And, you know, growing up in my house, we always watched things like Unsolved Mysteries, In Search of, Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World. And back then, if you got an episode of that every 6 months, it was exciting because it wasn't like it was today. There was no YouTube where you could go out and watch this stuff. You were lucky if you got, you know, Bigfoot content every so often, and then sightings came along and it got a little bit more regular. But it became more real because there was a chapter called Eastern Action, and in that book they talk about Stan Gordon. They talk about things happening in Pennsylvania. And that's in my backyard. Bigfoot's real and Bigfoot's here. Yeah. And so that excited me throughout my teens. And as I was old enough to go out and investigate and meet up with people who had sightings, you know, I became really really invested and interested. And it has, again, I go back to our Saturday lecture when we were talking. You know, back then I was a teenage boy talking to grown men on the internet about hairy things. You can't do that today without ending up on a list, you know, but the internet was a different time. It was a different time back then, you know. You didn't have to worry about getting molested on the internet at that time, but it was a different time. And that's how I met people like Henry Franzoni, who's now passed away. And I met them through the message boards, the Forest Giants Yahoo group. There just was a whole new world out there available to us when the internet came to fruition. And so then I met up with Eric Altman, and the rest is history. That's where I've been.
I mean, holy crap. How often do you go out?
Oh yeah, quite a bit. Yeah. This year has been kind of hard with work, but we have a very active research spot, Matt Arner and I, up in the northern part of Pennsylvania that we frequent, and we're spending a lot of time in pretty much the whole Allegheny Plateau, you know, which spans a good northern part of the state from, actually, I think it's eastern Ohio to New Jersey. But we're concentrating around the Allegheny National Forest and certain spots along that northern tier of PA where, Brian, there hasn't traditionally been a lot of Bigfoot sightings. However, the more and more time we spend out there, the more comfortable people are about coming out and talking to us about it. So every time we get out there, we probably get 1 or 2 new sightings that have never been cataloged by anybody before.
That's the beauty of going, you know, whenever you hear about all these people that they go 2 weeks here and then they shuffle off across the nation and they do 2 weeks there and then 2 weeks someplace else. To me, I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but I think with what you do and the way I do it is, you know, I've been 4 years in one location going out 3 times a week.
And that's the best. I'm with you, Brian, hands down. And the way I explain it is, you're cultivating yourself to that area. If something's there, you're trying to get yourself used and established as a presence. So one of the things that game cameras, right? I think we could pretty much accept for the fact that game cameras are probably going to be useless. But if you ever put a game camera up and you have a lot of like deer and other animals on your property, they put it up, they know there's something new there, right? And either they shy away from it for a little bit, or you get some brave ones that are just, right there looking at it as soon as you put them up. It's really funny to watch. And we've had game cameras up now for about 2 years, and they're cellular. So as soon as they trigger, they send an image to Matt. And it's great to see the wildlife that we're seeing on them. But kind of like ourselves, we're trying to make ourselves as comfortable and as non-threatening to the animals and the wildlife in the area so they can get used to us. So if we're out there, they're going to be less afraid, whether it's deer or it's whatever. And hopefully, if there is something out there else, it's starting to get comfortable where it begins to interact with us. If that'll ever happen, I don't know. But that's our thought. We're spending a lot of time in this area, making ourselves known, making ourselves like natural to the environment. Hopefully that the environment responds to us.
Yeah, it's kind of a way of, they know something's there, so they go, oh, Fred's back again. Wonder what he's up to. Oh, okay, let's go back and find our berries or something,
Right. And for like you've been there for 4 years, you haven't heard anything. So, eventually they'll see you as non-threatening, Brian, and maybe that's the way I don't want to say make contact like they're extraterrestrials or something, but, eventually you might start getting some sort of interaction. Maybe not direct, it's going to come up and shake your hand, but stalked. You can feel a presence of something throws a rock at, whatever it is, you start to know something's out there with you.
Oh yeah, we'll talk sometime, because I don't want it to be about me tonight, but 4 years and a lot of peanut butter jars and vocals and prints and sightings. But you were talking about, when I was talking about trying to pull a picture up, who are we to say what somebody sees? I was at a new place, and a friend and I came across some babies by accident that were down, and the adults, once the babies sounded the alarm, the adults came, to make sure we were leaving, and we got that picture.
Now, see, that's rather interesting, isn't it? Because you've got a large trunk there. I mean, that looks to be a really large tree, and I know folks can't see what's the diameter on that tree, Brian? That
I don't know.
out behind.
We haven't been back to measure yet, but
because it looks like it's either a tree or a couple trees in that picture.
One big round one,
right? And so it's sizable. So whatever that figure is, that's a decent sized figure in that picture.
Yeah, he was every bit of 8 foot, and I bet his arm was as big around as my chest.
Now, how did you feel when you encountered that? Did you feel threatened, or did you feel?
The two of us were nervous because of the fact that we screwed up and babies were around.
Right.
They literally came when we first knew. We heard them coming because of the fact that at first, to explain it, he ticked me off to begin with. He did an Ohio howl, and I hate that because I call blasted the Ohio howl 3 times, and I got a log thrown at my truck.
Ooh.
In my area. So I don't do Ohio howls anymore. And we went to this new place. He did an Ohio howl, and I threatened him, and with a kick someplace, and because right away within 30 seconds we had a tree knock back. So long story short, we walk in, does a tree knock, and then we hear a tree knock in the valley, does it again, goes back and forth a couple times, and then the one in the valley starts to get rhythmic, and I go, oh, it's a woodpecker. Well, then it got really fast, and then we heard a huge knock off. It would have been to our left, and a tree push over in front of us, off into and then a whistle to the right. And we knew at that point, because he's like, oh, F, there's babies. And we're like, okay, we're out of here. We're leaving. We're verbalizing it. And by the time we had taken 3 steps, they had gotten from wherever they were at to within 50 yards, which was when we started snapping those pictures. But we knew that we had better leave, or we were going to wind up a statistic.
Yeah, and the reason why I ask is because if you look at that figure in that picture, it's I could definitely see something large in that picture. Probably something that would make me uncomfortable if I stumbled upon that. Yeah, there's Charlie Wonton and Charlotte J. Hey guys, how are you? And I'm not one of those guys that gets excited about pictures. You know what I mean? Because they're often too subjective. But that one's very compelling to me. And just like I said, because I was able to see the distinct size of that tree. Like, that's a big tree.
Yeah, he had two with him, and he had a black one that wasn't quite as tall but was thicker. But the picture I got of him, he couldn't even hide behind the tree in stride. So, but that was the best of the pictures we had taken that day. But how did you get into what was your first experience like?
Well, so it's really funny because I've been in this search going on. I'm actually going to be 40 on Friday, so I do it 32 years since I've been an enthusiast and into it, and probably 20 some years since I've been investigating. In that time, I could say I probably had a handful of experiences. But I can tell you, Brian, my first experience came in 2005 or 2005, 2006. Forgive me. It was one of those 2 years in the Keystone State Forest with a gentleman by the name of Tim Cassidy, who's a naturalist and park ranger, and a dear friend of mine who's now passed away, Cindy Drageson. And we were out with the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society in Keystone State Forest for a weekend of a get-together, like an outing. And we had gone out on a day hike. It was Dave and Cindy, two very lovely people, dear to me. They've both passed, and I just love them to death. Great researchers, great people. And Ranger Tim. We had gone out on our own and kind of walked out and gone through the woods, and we came to this road, and we decided to hike up the road to get back to the area where we had parked. And as we were going through the area, Tim saw off to his right that was like a game path, a well-worn game path. So he decided to go in there, and as he gets in, he hollers into me and Cindy, "Hey guys, I think I see a footprint down here." So we go in, we don't step on it. Sure enough, there's an impression, Brian, a decent sized impression. And so we start following these impressions, and there's tons of them up through the forest. And we get up there, and I'm marking this area with Tootsie Roll wrappers, okay? We didn't have anything else to mark it, so I'm eating Tootsie Rolls and marking the tree with Tootsie Roll wrappers. I'm a fat kid. Do you blame me? And as we get up to this little plateau area, all of a sudden we see these things that kind of look like nests. And so, pardon me, as we're out there checking out this area, the weather started acting up, and we decided, well, let's get out of here. We know where we're at because I had marked that area with Tootsie Roll wrappers. And the weather got rough. It started to rain pretty hard, and we left. When we came back a couple hours later to that spot, it was like the whole geography changed. Probably a microburst or something had gone through there. In fact, the only reason why we knew we were in the same area is because of those damn Tootsie Roll wrappers. We found them in a couple trees. So as we go up and we get back to this area, Tim gets down, he starts getting near one of these nests, and all of a sudden, I get hit with this overwhelming sense of fear and nausea, like I'm ready to hurl everything I just had in my stomach. I ate a lot of Tootsie Rolls, but that wasn't the cause of the feeling. And Tim is hit with this overwhelming sense of euphoria. It's very different. We're both affected differently by whatever we're experiencing. And at that point, a couple of the other guys from the PA Bigfoot Society joined us, Eric Altman, Joe Biello, Norm Gagnon, and a couple others. And there's this loud crash that takes off through the brush like a freaking bulldozer. Now, at that time, fight or flight kicks in, and I haul ass after this thing through the woods. I don't know what possessed me, but I'm chasing whatever this thing is, bulldozing itself through the woods. And the next thing you know, I have people on the radio telling me to hold up. I'm getting yelled at because I shouldn't be doing this alone. And finally, a couple of us feel like we had gotten this thing like surrounded. And then we converged into the spot and there was nothing there. Like, I don't know, however it managed to escape us. I don't know. It managed to elude us. We all recover. We all go back out to the power line cut to start heading back towards the car. And I shit you not, Brian, to this day, and I'm still trying to find this photograph. It's out there on the internet. One of the people on that trip have it, but I can't find it. Somebody in the group said on the opposite side of the tree cut, they saw a figure watching us from in the tree line as we're walking away. And I've seen the picture, and for the life of me, I can't find it anywhere. Sorry for pointing, but it upsets me because I'm trying to find this picture still. And then, believe it or not, a tornado warning happened, so we had to call it quits for that day. But that was really remarkable. All of a sudden, I'm hit with this feeling of, to this point, to this day, we don't know if it was infrasonic or pheromonal. Tim's leaning more towards pheromones because of potentially being that close to the nest, and how we both had type of a different reaction. And if it was like infrasonic, we probably would have had the same type of reaction, because that's how infrasound, even as a weapon, tends to impact people. So that was my first experience I had with anything in Bigfoot. And Cindy and Tim, and I've always been fortunate, Brian, because any experiences I've ever had, I've never had by myself. I've always been able to share it with somebody, because I don't do research solo. For safety reasons, I always feel like it's better to go with a group, better to be, safety in numbers, not because of Bigfoot, because of people. This day and age, you don't know who the hell's out there. And after you read a couple missing 411 books, you don't want to take a chance.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. Actually, Netflix just put it, or not Netflix, Hulu put out a thing on Stalking Sally or something, talking about people, and it happened a quarter mile from my house.
Wow.
that thing would happen when they talk about it. So if you want to see human extreme behavior with stalking, it lasted 13 years. Check that out, and then realize. But no, you're right. I've been lucky. Some of mine have been with other people. That picture I showed you, Dee Dee wanted me to bring that up again, so I'll bring that up. I saw it in the comment. Dee Dee.
Oh, she's fantastic, man. I don't know if you know. She's her and Charlie Wonton, and they're wonderful people.
So, if I were better with the controls, I would zoom it in, because when you zoom in, you can actually see facial features on him, and I can tell you, he's not happy. He's not happy one bit that we are there. Even though
you can, and again, I know a lot of my more diehard friends would question my sanity at this point, but as I point to the screen, that's a big tree, and there's clearly a figure standing, at least you don't have to draw a red circle around it to point it out. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And the crazy thing is, you can see the leg run down the side of that tree too.
You can. You definitely clearly have there is a definition of something there, and it ain't a shadow. I mean, you could tell it's forming, but I'll tell you what, I've seen trees that size are not bigger in the Cook's Forest, Brian, up here, and that's an old growth virgin forest. I think the only one left in Pennsylvania, and some of those trees are so big out there you can't even put your arms around them. They're just that old and ancient.
Well, and have you heard of the Manistee National Forest?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're maybe 4 miles from it right there.
Okay. So, I mean, that's, folks, as we always say, you make up your own mind on that, but it's pretty compelling.
Yeah. And actually what took us there was the fact to, again, I'll make it short, was a couple fishermen had called my friend and told him that 2 nights before, they were in the middle of the river fishing next to this little island, and it was like midnight, and then they hear a fish jump and don't think anything of it. And then another fish jumps, but it's a little closer to the boat. Well, then when the next fish jumped, it was a basketball-sized rock that landed in the boat.
Well,
and something screamed at them from the shoreline, so they didn't even look. They just swallowed it out, and away they went.
I've had that rocks thrown at me, And I can tell you that's not a fun experience. I had a softball-sized rock tossed between myself and another researcher when another experience we had, Brian, was out in Gray Station, Pennsylvania, not far from the Keystone State Forest, all in that same vicinity. And we were out for a night hike near the Torrance State Hospital. And this is a very active train track. In fact, one of my favorite sighting reports from that area happened. There was a woman out one morning jogging near the train tracks, and she saw a Bigfoot pick up a deer along the train track, sling it over its shoulder, and walk away. You know, a train track, active train track, it's easy picking. You know, you can get all that food you need without expending any energy. But we had done an investigation out there. I got the hiccups. I'm so sorry. And when you get out there, there's the train station, there's woods on one side, and then there's a soybean field that goes up to the hospital on the other. So 4 of us went out. Billy Willard and Phil Bracco took the side by the forest. Myself and a friend, Matt, at the time, we took the side by the hospital. Fog's rolling in over the soybean field. It's starting to get a little creepy, you know, that ambiance that rolls in. And I hear up there Billy going, "Hey, I think I got some eye shine over here." So I run up the little hill and go over and check it out. Standing there for a little while, and all of a sudden in the back in the trees, I start seeing a little bit of eye shine myself. Well, we're standing there. Nothing really remarkable is happening. It starts raining. And it starts coming down pretty good. So we pack up, and as we're getting ready to leave, a softball-sized rock gets tossed right between Billy and I, misses my nose, probably, I'm not kidding, by like that much. It went zooming by my face. And we actually picked the rock up. You saw the rock that was thrown at me. I'm like, if it had hit me, it had done some damage. And so we walked, the 2 miles back to the cars, and that whole time kind of keeping our eye on that tree line. Like, if you're over there, buddy, you don't have to throw any more rocks. You know, we're leaving.
Got your point across.
Yeah. I mean, and whether these things do it maliciously or not, I still don't want to stick around and find out if it's throwing rocks at me.
No, because basically you may as well flip a coin, because I've had it go both ways.
Right.
I've had them mess with me doing it, and then I've had them where it was, intentional. Go now. So, the one time I knew they were messing with me was when I was in my area, and I wasn't even Bigfooting. I just wanted to get out in the woods. So I had my headphones on, trying to relax. And next thing I know, bang, right in my earphone. I'm like, what the frick? And looked down, and it was, just a pebble-sized rock had hit me in the earphone. Like, what the? So, but then there was another time when we were in the area, and, we're looking around in the valley, and then we hear something go crashing off, and we're like, oh, what the heck? And we look at it, we had jumped 2 deer. Oh, phew, okay. Well, then my friend and I, next thing we know, 2 rocks landed in between us. And I started snapping pictures, and in the picture, they're, blob, your typical blob stuff, but you could see 3 of them behind trees, what looked like. So it was like, crap, we probably interrupted a hunt. So I think those rocks are telling us we better go before we're next on the buffet list.
It's interesting because I like to compare these to sometimes known primates, and like, to me, with the jaw popping and stuff like that, it just makes me think chimpanzee. And if they hunt similarly to chimpanzees, that really makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah. Especially if they have that. Well, we know that they got to run along a line up to somewhere because they eat meat.
Right. They're not herbaceous, they're omnivores. And
yeah, and chimps, actually, they've shown use meat for different things besides food. They use it as bargaining chips for gifts.
Right. Absolutely.
So now we're in the 2000s, and you've had your experience. Now, 2000s, you were in a better spot than I was, because my first sighting was in 87. and I was going to be all over telling everybody. And then it dawned on me that I can't tell anybody because you know how much fun I'll be made of in 1987.
Right.
So
Well, it
2000s
was
were
a different time.
Yeah. Now, so how did what turned the corner for me was forums. What turned the corner for you to get into the podcasting, and how did you get the crew together you got now?
So we used to do Yahoo voice chats, and sorry about that. I apologize. Just got a message from my wife. They're always important. So we used to do these Yahoo voice chats when listening to shows like Bigfoot Central, the X Zone radio show with Rob McConnell. And there weren't any podcasts on Bigfoot at the time, right? That hadn't happened yet. And so this platform came along called Blog Talk Radio, and Blog Talk Radio kind of opened it up. Steve Cole, Squatch Detective, was the first person to do a Bigfoot talk radio. And Henry May and I, who had been friends through the Yahoo chats, decided we were going to start one of our own called Sasquatch Experience. And so we had decided to do that. Our first episode was called Bigfoot is What? And we decided to go and talk about, what we thought Bigfoot was, the origins, the stories. And it cascaded from there because at the time, like I said, there wasn't a lot of shows. Then 2 shows became 12 and 12 shows became 24. And you know how it goes. They just grow and grow and grow and grow. But I've always been kind of proud because I was, kind of part of that genesis of Bigfoot podcasting. I've always been one of those, they call us the OGs now. And just talking about it with the different researchers and the different controversies of the time, the different videos. You got to remember a lot of this stuff that's now Bigfoot history that we talk about was live at the time we were doing the show originally when it was going on. So we're talking about these things in real time. The Georgia Bigfoot hoax. That was real time, baby, when we were doing podcasting, and we were knee deep in bullshit with that one. So there was a lot going on at the time. It was really exciting. And then the mid 2010s came, and I just got Bigfoot burnout. There wasn't a whole lot happening. Finding Bigfoot was just becoming popular. And I decided that, maybe I start going into different categories. So I started doing paranormal talk radio. I've had a research group of my own. I spent a lot more time doing field work through that time than I did doing podcasting. Well, in September 2012, we were going out on a Bigfoot expedition, and I had a sighting of my own, first full sighting that I had. And it really changed my life, Brian. In fact, it almost made me give up Bigfooting. It had that much of a profound effect on me because you got to remember at that time, I had some experiences, but I was on the fence. Like, is Bigfoot really real? Am I out here chasing a mystery? What's going on? So we went out on this side. It was myself, my good friend, brother, Ray Hendershot, and Ray's the size of a Sasquatch himself. He's 6'4", 6'5", 340 pounds. He's a big dude. And then my buddy, Dustin Kinley, who at the time, he was still active with the National Guard. He's now done with the National Guard. Now, and so we had gone out as part of a group with David Rupert, Ryan Cavaline, and Eric Altman. We were kind of like the pre-scouts for that weekend. We went out and got cameras and stuff set up, and then Eric, Dave, and Ryan left, and it was myself, Ray, and Dustin staying out there that night in this area, just the 3 of us. So we had built a fire, and we were sitting around the fire because we were going to go to bed early so we could get up really early in the morning and see if we could get some activity going. And as we're sitting there by the fire, Ray's back's to the woods. My back's kind of to the entry to this meadow we're staying in, but I could see the meadow and part of the woods on the left. And Dustin's sitting off to my left, and he could see everything. The woods were on my right. Dustin could see the full view of everything. All of a sudden, out of my peripheral, I see something very large and light tannish beige color clips through our campsite and into the woods. And you can hear it take off through the woods. Dustin and I shoot up out of our chairs and we go over to the wood line, see if we can see what's going on in there. Because there's still light, but not enough that it's not penetrating that deep into the forest. You know what I mean? And we're like, what the hell was that? What did we just experience? And, we're trying to reconcile going on. What did we experience? We're sitting there and we're like, oh, man, I don't know. Let's go to bed. Let's see if we can get some sleep. We could tackle this more when we get up early in the morning. We take the woods off the fire, the logs off the fire, make sure the fire's out. We go and lay in the tent. And we're in there for a while. And as we're in there laying down, we start hearing something walking around our campsite. Now, if you've been in the woods long enough, you know the difference between something bipedal and something on four legs walking through the woods. There's a cadence to it. And there's a heft, and we're lying in there, and all of a sudden I see the little light on Dustin's cell phone come on. Now, by the way, there's no cell phone service out here. You get like a bar, 2 bars in the center of the meadow, which is still pretty far away from our tent. And we still hear these footfalls, and Dustin opens the tent, goes to get out, and something had moved the logs back onto the fire, and the fire's starting to rekindle. There's a glow, an orange glow going on out there. So Dustin's a little freaked out. He says, Forker, throw me my gun. And me being the epitome of gun safety, I threw him his gun. And I go to get my boots on and step out. And he goes, Forker, look. And as I look, that same figure is to where he's pointing that ran through our campsite earlier that night, runs up this little hillside and takes off like a bat out of hell around the peripheral of our campsite. And you could hear it moving. Well, that's enough to wake Ray up. And he's coming out. What's going on? And as we're standing there trying to figure out what's going on, Ray goes, well, that explains what touches me through the tent. He felt like something had touched him while he was laying there in the tent. And so at that point, I'm really freaked out. I run to the center of the campsite and I call and see if I can get a hold of Dave or Eric or anybody to see if they're still close enough to come back out to the center of the woods, out to the woods with us out here. I didn't get anybody, so I ended up calling Dave's wife, Carrie. And you could call her, and this day she'd tell you it was the most freaked out she's ever heard me. I said, Carrie, we got some activity going on out here. Can you get a hold of the guy and see if you can send him back? And she goes, yeah, we'll get a hold of Dave and see if we can get Dave back out there. So she got a hold of him. A little while, maybe about 40 minutes later, here comes Dave and Ryan, just the flashlights going. You could tell it's a person at this point. They come out. Ask us what's going on. We're freaked out. We tell him what's going on. Now, Dave's the kind of guy that could talk you into anything. If I don't know, we were freaked out, ready to go. Dave's like, but we're out here for this purpose. We're trying to get proof, let's just continue on. And so like the good soldiers we were, we took the encouragement and hung out. Nothing happened. We went back into the tent. Dave and Ryan kind of bivouacked themselves out into the trees where they were kind of hidden. And they wait out there for a while and nothing's going on. And Dave goes, hey guys, we're going to catch out. We'll be back in the morning. I don't think anything else is going to happen tonight. You should be fine. We hear them leave. They take off. We're all getting relaxed a little bit. And all of a sudden, Brian, here comes those footfalls again into our campsite. Now, I swear to you, I don't remember unzipping the tent or how I got out of it. There could be a Forker-shaped hole in the side of that tent. But we got out of that tent like we were some half-assed team, and our backs are all to each other. We're yelling, hey, if you're somebody, identify yourself. If you're messing with us, it's not cool. I'm telling Dustin at this point, just shoot it. If obviously somebody's out here messing with us or something's messing with us, just shoot it. I'm tired of them playing games with us. And then from a tree, we could see something kind of looking out from a side of a tree at us. So I said, Dustin, there it is. Dustin points his gun, and just like Hooper and Jaws, shoot it, Quint, shoot it now. Right? I'm telling Dustin, shoot the damn thing. Dustin's like, I can't shoot it. I don't know what it is. So finally, the three of us get this great idea. Let's charge it. So three of us get together and we haul ass towards that big figure, and it takes off. Now, what's interesting is in that area, there's like a 2 to 3 foot kind of like, it's flat in the ridge, then it goes down. You know what I'm trying to say? Like it's lower at that point than it is the meadow. And whatever it was still higher than me standing there at eye level. Now I'm not very tall. I'm 5'6" on a good day. And so that thing had to be 7-8 feet tall, Brian, just by where it was standing. And it took off. And as we're like, okay, we're super freaked out now because whatever it is, it keeps coming back, right? We just don't want to be out here anymore. So we're hanging out and it's starting to sprinkle a little bit. We're like, you know what? At first daylight, we're going to pack this stuff up. We're going to get the hell out of here. And daylight breaks. Well, before that, there's a flash of light, and that's important. It's not lightning. It was never lightning, but it was looked like a flash, like from a camera. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
And so daybreak hits. We threw everything to a couple Rubbermaid totes, and our fat asses get out of there in like 6 minutes. We hauled ass out of there, and I was very uncomfortable. And I don't know. It was a total mind trip for me because at this point I always entertained Bigfoot was real, but I didn't know. And to have an experience like that was just kind of traumatic because all those feelings you're having, they just kind of hit you like a kaleidoscope. You know, it's just like, bam, you're hit with all these things and all the emotions. And like all these years you've believed people and didn't believe people. And all these years you've thought this. And it was just, I just wanted to give it up. I'm like, okay, I saw something that's not supposed to exist now. What do I do? How am I ever going to be unbiased again? How am I going to be objective? And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just done. I talked to Eric Altman that day, told him what happened. He was in disbelief. And this was a very active area of Pennsylvania, but I just never expected to have a sighting of my own, Brian. Ever. Never. And the fact that Dustin and Ryan were there, or Ray were there with me to experience that kind of made it a little easier for me to deal with. But the fact it kept coming back really, really bothered me. And it's not that I ever felt like it was going to hurt us, but it was just so, I don't know, menacing, I guess, in a way, is the only way. Though I never felt like it was going to hurt us, like the fact it kept coming back bothered the hell out of me. And so I called Dave Rupert later on that week and told him what happened. And I said, Dave, you might want to go check the cameras out there because there was a flash. I think something on the game cam picked it up. And he goes, Sean, those game cams didn't have flashes on them. And so I don't know what that flash of light was, Brian, but it was definitely like a flash of light from like a source, not like lightning. It was like a flash of light. And to this day, it still bothers me. I get uncomfortable thinking about it. I told my story to the group last Saturday. I've talked about it maybe a dozen times now since it's happened. It just makes me uncomfortable. And it changed the way I think about this. And it changed the good thing that came from it is it really changed the way I deal with witnesses and people that experience it because it allows me to be a lot more empathetic. We put a lot of pressure on witnesses to come forth and tell us what they experienced. And all we have to start treating people like people and not data points. If they're anything like me and they had an experience with something, it shook them and it's a little traumatic. And that's how it's been with me. And I'm still remembering things. And Matt Arner, my research partner, I bring Matt up often. After we did the presentation on Saturday, he goes, Sean, you left the part out about Ray getting touched through the tent. I'm like, you're right. I did because it wasn't part of my experience, Brian. It was part of Ray's. And sometimes it's hard to take me out of my experience and pull me into everybody else's, And,
a little misty eyed here because, what you sound echoes a lot because most of the time up until a certain point, I had okay experiences, we'll say, but I did have one that, did scare me at one point. But, and for you and I, it's funny because the people that, like the first time I went to this new place over 4 years ago, I expected to get skunked. We all know people who have been out there their entire lives. looking for these, beings and jump up and down and think they've hit the Holy Grail and they get a tree knock,
Right.
let alone a visual. So, once you have a sighting, and especially if you're not ready for it, now you got to question everything, because, if in your reality you were kind of on a fence about it, it's like, maybe Santa's real, maybe he's not. Well, now you just seen that bad boy going up, this fat butt going up the chimney and the toys left behind, and now you got to question everything. So,
and it's so hard, man. Like, because you want to still be able to be on the fence.
Yeah, you want to be objective when you talk to people.
Objective, right? It's hard, and I lost that, and that really bothered me. But then I realized, you know what, Brian? I don't have to be unobjective. I can be. I don't have to be not objective. I can be objective, because there are people that are going to make up sightings. But Brian, when somebody's had an experience or something they can't explain, I don't know what it is. Like, there's an underlying tether that pulls you together. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's something about it that you can connect with somebody and you're like, son of a bitch, they really did experience something. Like, it's an intangible, like, I can't explain it to this day, but I'll tell you, I can feel it when I'm talking to somebody that's experienced something. I can feel it.
Yeah. And it's like you said, in a way, it's kind of a bond, because you've been through something. And even though you don't know exactly what they went through, they went through something.
Right.
They went through something. And then there's the ones that, and I'll ask you about it, and we can answer whenever, but, how many people have tried to pull the crap over your eyes and over the years. But then it's like George Carlin said, it's like when you're talking to somebody, it doesn't take very long to figure people out. But you listen to them, you think, this guy is freaking stupid. It's like you listen to somebody and it's like, this guy's full of crap.
Right. And you know what? We've had those experiences. In fact, we had one not long ago where we had a guy send us it was a really interesting story, and it wasn't overly detailed, which is what really took me into it. That they had, I want to get the details right, because actually it pissed me off so much I wanted to burn it from my mind. But it involved a car accident. They had avoided hitting something and hit a tree, and that it involved like life flight and all that. And they give us the coordinates of where this was supposed to have happened, and we get out there. The witness doesn't meet up with us, and there's not any ever sign an accident took place there. Nor could we find anything on any of the police blotters about it, And you think something significant like that, there would have been evidence of it somewhere. And it wastes a lot of time. And for folks listening that for some reason might feel like it's a good idea to try to hoax, it wastes time and resources. We're not funded by any kind of government agency. We're funded from the in our pocket funds. And none of us that I know of are Rockefellers. I'd like to be. I'll tell you that. I wish I had the expendable income to go out and spend as much time as I want on this. But for people that mess around, you're taking money out of our pockets we could be using to spend towards, real witnesses and real research that could be useful, instead of wasting our time. And that's where I get really upset about it, because, now you're pissing with my money and you're pissing with my time. And those are things that you don't usually get back. You can always make more money, but you can't get the time back. And that's time, Brian, we could be using on something else, Yeah.
You probably pay it out of the same fund I do, the PIM, pay it myself.
Yeah. And then you deal with, I don't know if you like me, but you deal with the angry wife.
Yeah, that's another story in and of itself. Holy cow.
I made the comment last night that if anybody had realized how much money we spent on this, I probably could have put one of my kids through college on the amount of money spent on this over the years. Sadly.
It doesn't take long, because, for a long time I treated this like George Carlin said, it was interest. Interests are free. But once you buy a recorder and a thermal and maybe a camera or two, it's no longer it's a hobby. You've definitely created or an interest, you definitely created an expensive hobby, because
Right.
even a cheap thermal is not cheap.
No, I mean, it's getting more affordable, Brian, but that, still, it doesn't mean it's everybody can afford it. And, but here's the other thing. I've become more of a minimalist when it comes to research. Like most of the things I take are pen, paper, and a flashlight anymore. So pen and paper, and pardon me about that. I'm sorry. Is because I don't want to be distracted. And I think as much as the technology is great, it's distracting us from why we need to be out there. I think I've given up hope of being the person to get any kind of video evidence. We do put long-term audio recorders out because we do think there's a play to be made there. We put out, we haven't really done the gifting, and I don't like to call it gifting because I don't think we're trying to. Can we call it baiting without being offensive to anybody, Brian? Can we try the term baiting? We haven't tried that yet, but I'm sure we could. And the reason why we haven't is we have a lot of bear out there, and I don't want to get them comfortable with a meal.
Here, I'll show you something. See this?
Yeah.
4-pound peanut butter jar. I was putting 9 of them out a week for 2.5 years.
Wow.
And this is actually how I found this one.
Sam's Club must love you.
Oh, it was after the time in history we're not supposed to talk about.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha.
And so Walmart hated me. I mean, people online got really mad when I was buying 9 jars of peanut butter.
I'm hoarding it. Peanut butter's the cure. I'm sorry.
Instead of toilet paper, I'm getting peanut butter, people.
You can't wipe your ass with peanut butter. Yes, you can. I know. Here's 9 jars that tell me I can.
You can get it really clean too. But yeah, that's I'll tell you the story behind it sometime, because I got in trouble by the DNR and everything.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I could see that. And I will say that about our state. We have a really great DCNR, Brian. And in fact, in some areas, I used to leave a business card out of my car if we were out, because they got to know us out there. And if for some reason anything happened, they at least knew we were in the area and how to get a hold of us.
Yeah.
And
DNR here got called because have you heard about when people have talked about when you quit gifting, they get mad?
Yeah. The outbursts, as I call them.
Yeah, those peanut butter jars were being chucked into people's yard at 3:00 in the morning and setting up for security motions. So,
did anybody ever give you the footage of that? Because I would love to seen that on the camera. Like if anybody had those, cameras out there, like just chucking peanut butter jars at their house.
Nope, they never showed me the footage. But
man, I would love to get that, wouldn't you? Wouldn't that be great to have? Like, God, just to see the peanut butter jars get rocketed, like, into somebody's yard.
Yeah. I still feel bad because one person's house got, the person, little girl woke up screaming because there was one looking in her second story window. It escalated to that next.
Well, one of the first stories that's going to be in my book is a story from 95, I think, not far from where I live, of a woman that would hear something beat on her house at nighttime. And she woke up one morning and there was a large handprint on her window, her front window. And she had observed it, I guess, the night before at looking at her window, of it looking in her windows and in the area around her house. And that kind of put me into the mindset of, she said she had a picture of the handprint, but she was never able to get it to us. But how many rolls of film do you think are out there in people's drawers, drunk drawers, or cameras out there that might have a picture on them that are never going to see the light of day, Brian?
Oh, I bet there's a lot of them.
Right. And that's so frustrating.
It is, because I think some people do it, for me, a couple reasons. One, the ridicule.
Right. Agreed.
Everybody thinks that, like me, if I'd have sat on that picture thinking, oh, I got the $1 million photo, but I'm not going to show it until somebody gives me $1 million. I think you get a lot of that too.
Right. But you know what? To your point, the ridicule is if I got the picture, I don't know who I would tell. And I've been in this research a long time. I don't know who, or if I would, because at this point, is any picture going to be worth it? You know, everybody, it's AI, or well, AI is only so good. I don't know. I saw King Kong versus Godzilla in the movie theater, or Godzilla X Kong, or whatever it's called, the New Empire, and they still look pretty CGI to me, and that's Hollywood's best.
Yeah, and even the stuff you see floating around now, there's always something off about it.
Right.
They can get the arm length right, the face looks off, and I know not everyone looks the same, kind of like people, but usually the arm length is what gives it away for me anyway. The arms are always too short.
Yeah, I think we've come to understand, like, at least to most of us, there's like a ratio of proportions, that it just looks right, as opposed to some things that don't. Now, we could also give and take that, maybe there's a variety within the species, just like anyone else and anything else. But when it looks wrong, you just know there's something not right about it. It doesn't look right. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and that's, somebody sent me some, my mom sent me a video from Texas that somebody knows that, I do the little research, and they said, look, we got some real Bigfoot stuff for you. And so she sent it to me. And I looked at it, something is off about this. Something looks wacky. And because it had the long arms, but then when I watched it real close, I was able to, one good thing about tech, I was able to take it from my phone and put it on my big screen TV.
Right.
And then I noticed that when it walked, the back feet would come up off the ground like monkeys do, but the elbows didn't bend. So it was like they got arm extensions in there.
Yeah. So right there, you knew that.
Yeah. I sent it back. I told my mom, I said, tell them to try harder next time because this didn't do it.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, that's the biggest problem. I don't know about you, as far as the biggest problem with people accepting that they're out there is because of all the hoaxing. It really puts a bad light.
I think there's part of that. I think the other thing is, some of our community doesn't help themselves, and rather you're on team woo or not, like that attention seems to be the attention that gets all the attention. And those of us that are still more in the flesh and blood camp, we kind of get swooped to the side because it's not as entertaining and you can't make fun of it. You know what I mean? So there's still the comedy in the woo type. But also, when you're in this trying to make it scientific, that stuff makes it harder to prove. And whether we're right or not, presentation's key. And do you really want that voice to be the voice speaking for the community? Or would you rather say, let's prove this thing exists. And then once we prove it exists, we can get into the nitty gritty of everything else.
Yeah, see, I'm right there with you on that, because it's like, how is a community on the outside looking in supposed to agree with a community that can't even agree amongst itself?
Right.
With all the bickering and backstabbing, and it's like, this is my organization and we're right because we've got this, and look at all the people that come to us, where it's like, just because people come to you doesn't mean you're right.
Listen, I've said it many times. I believe what I believe, and that's based on what I've researched and encountered, but that does not mean I'm right. That's what I believe. And if you want to believe what I believe, that's great. But also realize that you should be able to make up your own mind and your own opinions and be comfortable with that. And as long as you can validate it to you, that's fine. Just understand, validating it to you may not be everybody else's validation. So not everybody else may accept it, and that's their prerogative.
Yeah, that was like when I took my mom out. It took a while, and we go out, and it was 3/4 of a print. Like, you had the 2 outside toes and a nice heel impression, and then about just behind the back, the big toe. And there were more impressions, so it wasn't like just a one thing deal. And she's like, "Oh, okay." I'm like, "What do you mean?" "Oh, okay." I said, "You know how many people look all their lives and don't even find this?" And she's like, "Well, yeah, but now I want to hear one." I'm sorry, Mom, I don't have a banana to ask him to command the monkey trick right now.
And to your point, though, you're right. It's I could tell you, I've probably encountered a handful of footprints in my time that were really good prints that I would be comfortable casting and showing them to people. In fact, this last one we took a picture of, we couldn't take a cast of it, so we did a 3D LiDAR scan with it. And we showed it to Dr. Meldrum at a conference, and he didn't think it was a footprint, but, you know, he wasn't there, and we didn't quite agree with his estimation, and that's our prerogative. You know what I mean? We just didn't agree with his concurrence, and probably the problem was because there wasn't enough detail there. And I think this is one of those situations where circumstance and context adds a little bit more to the validity of the print than the actual print itself.
Yeah, that's like, here, I'll show you a quick picture of a print I took in the snow. But you're right, without context, it really doesn't look like a whole.
Right.
Whole
And,
lot, you know what I mean?
you know, the story, and again, when you're not using it as principal evidence, you know, you're using it as a potential or a secondary evidence, you know, it's, you know, Matt and I keep it in the book of this is what we've discovered in our area, potentially, not definitively.
Let's see. Oh, here's one that I found on the ground, but let's see.
Cleared out impression, you got a tape, right? It's hard to determine, but you've at least taken steps to secure it and get some measurements. You know what I mean? You're trying to reinforce what it could be, right? Cleaning it out, right?
That was 23 inches.
That's a big print.
And it lines up with, try to find this real quick.
What was interesting, Brian, what was interesting about the print that Matt and I found, oh, now see that, now that could potentially be a spot where a print was, and it could have done some melt or disfigure, you know what I mean? Disfigured.
Yeah, that was, and right there's the context, because that was literally the night before, where a friend and I got, we'll say, escorted out.
Okay.
We had seen the prints going in, and that was the print that I measured. So
that's a big impression, right? And it looks like that.
It was 23, and then in the picture, if you zoom in, you can see the toes in it. But what I thought was cool was the fact you hear about how when they walk, their hips kick out. And if you look on the left side, you can see where at the top of the snow that left heel starts to kick out.
I can see what you're saying there.
But like you said, but without context, it's like, could have been a snow rabbit or something, you know?
Could have been, right. I mean, and that's the thing with footprints. They could be a lot of different things, but unless we take pictures of them and collect it, we don't know, you know? And sometimes you could send that to somebody who may be an expert and say, you know what, I could pull something from that, you know?
Yeah. Well, Sean, we kind of hit that magic time mark as much as I'd like to keep going.
Well, you know, we can always do a part 2 at some point, Brian, and we'd like to get you on Sasquatch Experience to talk about your stuff at some point as well. So we'll have to book you for that.
Yeah, I'd love it. So we'll definitely book part 2 for this, and we'll book part 1 for over there, because I know. 2 weeks ago, I had a recorder stolen, so you'll enjoy that, because there were actually prints coming from the woods up to the tree that kept on going without my recorder, and I ironically gorilla taped it to the tree.
Good old gorilla, right? No, we'll be glad to hear it. And honestly, I enjoyed myself. Thanks for asking me to come on the show with you. Like, I enjoyed myself tonight. It was a lot of fun. Well,
thank you. You know, hopefully I was a good enough stand-in for Grizzly, and like I said, hopefully you and I can get together for a part 2 on this.
Oh, absolutely, man. You just let me know.
All right. Can you hang around for a minute backstage while I wrap this up?
Absolutely.
Okay, 1 second. All right, everybody. So that was Sean, and what a night. The hour absolutely flew by. It felt like 10 minutes for me. You know, this was one of my favorite by far. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and everybody on the replay. Thanks for listening. Please hit the like, subscribe, And from coast to coast and around the world, everybody have a good night, and we will see. Quick announcement, there will be no show Friday. I am under the weather, and I ordered the doctor's rest for a few days. So I will see you next week. Have a happy Labor Day weekend, and good night.